I definitely relate to like that general concept around what got you to here won't get you to there. We realised that, and as a result, we've taken off again because of rejigging the business to suit where we're heading, not where we're at.
You might even change a total group of customers. NPs that you invested in are irrelevant. What gets you here won't get you there. We've actually identified in the roadmap what you need to do to get there. That's how the whole goal of the roadmap is you can continue to grow as much as you want, and you don't have to get stuck.
Matt Pohl is the CEO of the Rewild Group, but his journey started as a small business owner after discovering the stages of growth methodology.
He grew his company's value 10 times in just 3 years and sold it successfully. Now, through the Rewild Group, he helps other business owners achieve the same kind of transformation.
So started that business in mid-30s. Together, we ran that business for about 15 years. And we really had kind of two seasons of that business. First 12 years, we had built a nice lifestyle business. Last 3 years, we employed a business growth methodology, a roadmap, if you would. Mm-hmm. And that helped us to get unstuck. And in those last 3 years, we tripled the business. The value of that business went up 10x in those 3 years, and we sold that business at year 15. So coming out of that, I had seen how this framework, this roadmap, really helped me as a business owner, and I ended up acquiring that research and intellectual property from the inventor, and have built a system called organizational rewilding that helps small businesses around the globe. So that's coming into that. A few years after we had sold the business, my wife, Dawn, was getting a little bit of antsy. She was tired of just, hanging around the house, and, I was driving her nuts. And so
there it is. There it is.
That's the truth. She had always had a passion. She grew up, I went the college route. She went the Main Street route, working in hospitality and restaurants and stuff like that. So she always had a heart for blue collar workers. And we started talking about it, and we had kind of read a book about how you buy a business and then you build that business as opposed to starting from scratch. And we thought that idea rang true, that would be a good idea if we wanted to do another venture. And so she had spent a year as a business broker and was looking at businesses. She listed a lot of businesses, looked at a lot of businesses, saw a lot of bad businesses. And we just ended up kind of saying, well, let's look for Denver-based specialty trade. We prefer B2B instead of a B2C business. And lo and behold, a year or so after, kind of looking and talking through that, she found this welding business. And so that kind of started that venture.
Explain to me what a welding business is.
So a welding business in the U.S. at least, and I would say there's obviously a range within this trade. Our business is really on the commercial industrial side of things. So we specialize in pipe welding.
Right.
So industrial applications where there's pipe, stainless steel pipe being welded. We do other things. We do structural and staircases and other kinds of things. But kind of our bread and butter is particularly stainless steel pipe welding for industrial applications.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think over here we'd probably call that fabrication.
Yeah, so it is a welding and fabrication kind of business. So.
Sure. Okay. And is it predominantly stainless?
I would say, half of our revenue comes from stainless steel, whether that's structural stainless, which is, there's not a lot of that, but there is some structural, but mainly process piping and industrial applications of piping. We also do, we just do all the hard kind of welding that needs advanced certifications and stuff like that. We've got some of the best welders in Denver.
So when your wife was researching companies, on that journey, what made this one stick out? from the
Well,
from the perspective of someone looking to acquire?
yeah, I would say if you get to know my wife, she's definitely a, a fire, ready, aim kind of person, and so I think in large part it was a solid business that came up on the radar, kind of checked the boxes that we had.
What is solid? What is solid?
Solid in that it'd been around for a while. The financials, the books were clean. It was fairly simple operation, and we saw a lot of opportunity to grow it. It was basically a husband and wife. He was a master welder and had been welding all of his career and was looking to retire. So they had built a nice, solid business in that way, had a good reputation.
Staff?
And what's that? Not a lot of staff. Yeah, they had a couple welders in addition to the owners. So, like I said, we were more of a fire ready aim. Looking back at that, and I think she would admit too. We probably pulled the trigger a little bit early, but we always find if you jump in, you gotta figure out how to swim, and for us, that's always worked as opposed to just being overly cautious.
So with a, I mean, as a tradesperson myself, or former tradesperson, and knowing the welding route very well as a plumber,
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of skill and experience that comes into the application of such a vertical. So when you're acquiring a company like that with no experience on the how,
Right.
limited team with an owner who is looking to exit, essentially I'm guessing doesn't want to be around anymore. Fair enough.
Right. Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, that's a little bit of the, we're showing the parachute while we're falling down, right? So, I think in our past businesses, Dawn and I were always the specialists, right? We knew how to do the business better than anybody else. And so part of my confidence going into it was having this roadmap, that I was help my business. We were using for many other businesses. And I knew that would help us from a kind of working on the business side of things. But working in the business, there was this huge gap in knowledge. One part of the puzzle was that our son, he had been I would say kind of a recreational welder and metal fabricator, and he came into the business with us. So he had some of that blue collar background. He had worked in a agricultural manufacturing business as a manager over a staff of 100 people, and was used to working with blue collar kind of folks. So he was bringing some of that skill set, but that was definitely the big gap. We recognized that going in. I think it was bigger once we got in than we realized. I tried to get Dawn to pick up welding. She said, absolutely not. And it's probably good because she's a bit reckless. So I could see her really injuring herself. But so really the focus when we bought the business was we had to build a team that was going to support growth. And so we really added to staff, I would say, ahead of building up the work. There's pluses and minuses to that. We were running through cash pretty quick. But then we got some big projects, and it allowed us to see who was actually a good welder and fabricator versus those that just said they were. And within that first year, the two people that were with the business, they did leave the company. And so we had a whole new team within the first 12 months of owning the business.
Why did they leave?
They weren't as skilled as they portrayed when we first bought the business, and as the owner, I think he was just being optimistic for them, but he was really carrying them all those years, and when they had to step up and show their own skill set, they didn't shine. So we had one big project where we had to bring in a bunch of temporary workers, and we went through probably 30 to 40 different welders and on that project in about 4 months. And when you see, certain people side by side, it's very clear who's skilled. That's one of the great things about trades, right? You can't BS your way into saying you're good at something, because your work shows every day.
Sure. So during that stage, was your primary focus to build like a leadership team that could manage, recruit, train, retain, practically with the guys out in the field?
Yeah. So I think there was two parts of that. One was bring in work, and then the second was, build a team that can execute on that work.
And how was bringing in work? How did that look from the perspective of tender if you'd never done that before, or bidding?
Yeah, it was difficult. It was learning a whole new market, understanding, I had professional services businesses. So my past businesses had a national footprint instead of just a local footprint. I was used to a lot of digital marketing, and, that was kind of the way we went at it. And we had some success there, but we learned after some failure there, or not as good a success as we had hoped, that the trade industry is very, they're what I would call people buyers. They want to buy from people they trust, work with people that you can look in their eyes and, you can be confident that they get the work done. So, and that's a challenge when Don or I are not welders, right? So it's not like a tradesman who grows up and starts his own business.
Well, I think as well, business to business is very different, right? Because digital marketing is great for business to consumer, but as you've experienced, like in a scenario where you're working with builders or property management or whatever it might be, then it's very much relationship based. You got to get on there. You got to get in their Rolodex.
Yeah, exactly. So it just required us to kind of change that. So like I was saying, those were the two areas we were focused on: building the team and bringing in work. And, so we started to get involved in associations. We just started networking more. That was a big part of it. And part of it was just we needed to be in the market as our new company, because we did change the name of the business on top of that. So the business we bought was called Nick's Welding. And as Dawn likes to say, she doesn't look like a Nick at all. So we changed it to Commercial Welding LLC. And that really reflected what we were about. So it has taken some time to build that out. Now, we were fortunate and got some big projects early on, and I think those were relationships where the contractor or client that we were working with actually appreciated that we weren't just tradespeople, that we were professional business owners, and brought that kind of sophistication to, at least in the States, a market that often is not, kind of lacks a professionalism, right? A sophistication. And so that played to our advantage in some of these early wins.
I mean, like welding and fabrication has obviously a lot of liability and, things that, red tape, let's call it. So how did the previous owner equip you with, like from a process perspective, at least some of the obligations or things that, you need to make sure you can, like, did he train you guys at all?
Yeah, he stayed on for 90 days, and we.
How many days?
90, so 3 months. Yeah. One of the aspects of this model, this framework, talks about master processes, and so I was able to use some of that methodology to extract from him a lot of the knowledge and document it and things like that. So I would say that was more from a business process standpoint. But, here in the States, for welding, particularly welding, there are specific certifications that your welders have to complete and be qualified on. And so we learned that process, not to a great deal. I would say my son Caleb really stepped into that. He really kind of likes learning those kinds of detailed things and threw himself at that. So he became our expert, at least on the family side, the ownership side of understanding certifications. We found a couple industry experts, that do certifications here in town, and they became kind of consultants for us to help us navigate those complexities. And then over time, as we identified these key players on our team, they came with their own knowledge that continued to build up our institutional capability.
Okay. And so did this business have a lot of competition?
Yeah, the market here, at least in Denver, and I suspect it's similar to this in other kind of major U.S. metropolitan areas, is there's kind of two ends of it's kind of like a dumbbell, right? You've got your big Goliaths that are big metal fabrication, erectors, structural steel companies, those kind of folks. And then on the other end, you have, and there's not a lot of them, but obviously they're big. On the other side of it, you have what we call rig welders in the States, which are basically a guy who knows how to weld and has a truck that has a welding machine on it, and they'll go wherever the work is. We call those rig welders. So just the solopreneurs are out there. And so that's really the vast majority of the market. And so we felt there was a sweet spot in the middle there where you have a professional business that has all the insurance, has the certifications, can do administrative paperwork and put a team on a project and can do a larger team or a larger project because it's just not a one-off person, that there's a kind of a sweet spot in there. That's really what we focused on, is being kind of this, not the individuals, but not the big corporations, so we can be more responsive.
So did you essentially in the early stages there then just reach out to a lot of these rig welders to be doing the work that you guys acquire through tender?
We didn't go that route, in part because the prior owner kind of warned us of that. He said, "Your rig welders are not reliable. They'll drop you in a second if they can get 10 more cents an hour down the street." And so he did wisely advise us to not rely on that kind of a workforce. So, and we always have hired employees. So in the States, they're W-2 employees. So they're getting a wage, a paycheck. We always found that it was easier to build, a quality team that kind of adheres to our core values and our brand values, and that creates a better product for our clients.
Okay, makes sense. So let's change gears a bit and shift into some of these methodologies and structures and frameworks and things that you've been able to deploy and, to the, I guess, is it to the advantage of this specific business, or is there other businesses that you coach with this methodology?
Yeah, so this roadmap comes from almost 3 decades of research of small and mid-sized businesses. And like I said, the inventor of it had done decades of research before I even had used it for one of my businesses. We continue to do that research, so we're about up to 1,500 small and mid-sized businesses that have gone through our research process. And one of the key things that the research was basically asking, why do so many small businesses fail? Why do some, they'll grow a little bit and they'll get stuck. Some never start growing at all. And one of the key discoveries is that businesses go through these 7 stages of growth. And these stages are unique and definable, and they represent different stages of complexity. So as a business becomes more complex, in order to manage that and for that business to be successful, you have to adapt to that level of complexity. And what drives complexity or determines your level of complexity is the number of employees. So it's kind of simple to say if you add more people, it becomes more complex, right? Sure. We all know that as business owners. But what the research identifies, there are specific ranges of employees during which the complexity is kind of in a stable area and you can maintain the same best practices or rules to follow. So essentially, it helps a business owner know where they are. it helps them align to those rules, and it also predicts what's coming next. So as you begin to grow, you're not stuck doing the business the old way. The way I say it, it's like when you change to a new stage, you're playing a different game of cards.
Sure.
So if you're trying to play spades or euchre and now it's poker, it's no wonder you're losing or you get stuck because you're using the wrong rules. Yep. And so this map basically says, here's 8 areas, you got to follow these rules, and it directs your attention to that. It also helps you understand when you need these structures within your business. So, for example, in a stage 1 business, kind of the 2 main elements you need to have are a strong business model. That means you've intentionally designed your business to be resilient and profitable. And you need clear organizational structures. People need to know what hats they're wearing, what's that defined work that they're responsible for, how do they move up in an organization. Those are 2 elements at stage 1. You need those right out of the bat. Now, there's other elements that'd be nice to have, but you don't necessarily have to have them at stage 1. But by stage 2, there's a couple more elements that you need to have. And you can kind of work ahead of schedule on those if you want to. But it's businesses that don't know that those elements are needed, those structures are needed, that they don't have, they're not following these best practices. Those are the businesses that get stuck. So Don and I were confident that once we bought this business, we could scale it. We know when these stages change, what the rules are. So when we went from 2 employees to 15 employees in 18 months, that didn't bother us. We knew where we were. We were in stage 2. Here's the rules. Here's how we have to adjust and realign. Here's these structures we need in place. So we had that all ready. So, the old business was doing about 900,000 US a year in revenue. Our first full year of ownership, we doubled that. And our second year of ownership, we doubled it again. So we went from 900 to 1.8 to almost 4 million in those 2.5 years.
So what was some of the, what are some of the obstacles or some of the changes that require adaptation when segueing through these various stages, as you say?
I'll give you a couple categories, and then I'll give you one example. So the categories include things like your leadership style. So as the CEO of a business, how you lead a stage 1 business, a stage 2 business, or stage 3 business, adjust. It's not necessarily radically different, but there's enough difference that if you're using the old style leadership, by the time you're up to stage 3, it becomes less effective. Okay, so you have to know what those leadership style blend works best for your organization. So you as a leader needs to adapt to that and align with that. So that would be one area. There are specific rules of growth. We call them the non-negotiable rules, where they're just kind of basic things you got to take care of. You need a CRM system. You need a basic financial system. You need to, in stage 1, you need to hire generalists because you don't have enough people to specialize. So people have to wear multiple hats. So there's kind of guidelines like that. One of the big ones, though, that helped me in my old business that was stuck and then tripled in 3 years was this idea of gates of focus. So gates of focus says that there are 3 areas you can put your energy in to try to grow your business. You can focus on people, you can focus on process, or you can focus on profit. So people, process, and profit. Now, those things are always important for a business at every stage, but at each stage, there's an optimal prioritization for those 3, and it changes with each stage of growth. And if you're misaligned there, you often get stuck. And that's where my business was that in year 12. I'm a process guy. I'm a data scientist by training and education, and a lot of my experiences in data analysis. So I'm a process guy. In my business, I put process as number 1. I figure if we can do the work best, we're going to win work. People, I think people are very important in an organization. So that was my second priority. And I put profit third because I figured if I got those first two right, profit's going to come. And I'm not saying there's not truth in that, but in a stage one business, profit is the number one gate of focus. If you can't build a business that generates revenue that is profitable, you'll never get out of stage one. So I had that prioritization totally backwards in my business. And that was the most significant change. It wasn't that I intentionally prioritized those in that particular way. That just was what came naturally. And that's where the roadmap helps. It takes what you think is just kind of intuitive and it gives you kind of guardrails that says, no, this is how it needs to be in your current stage. And then you align to it and it works. So stage one is profit, people, and then process. You don't worry about process in stage one so much. You put process where you need to, but only where you need to, because you're still trying to figure out what business you're actually in. If you put too much emphasis on process, it's going to change anyway. So you're just wasting energy. You have to focus on profit in stage one. So those are the kinds of areas that the roadmap helps with.
Yeah, I definitely relate to like a lot of this stuff. I mean, especially like that general concept around what got you to here won't get you to there. You know, like we've
exactly
that whole sort of rebuilding stage internally because we realized that, and as a result, like we've just sort of taken off again because of the time we've put into rejigging the business to suit where we're heading, not where we're at.
Right.
And that conversation, funny you say that around what comes first, the people, process, profit. Like I was also the same. Like when we were so big on process and we had all these SOPs that, of course, as we were growing, inevitably ended up changing and they all became redundant.
Mm-hmm. and stale, right? Because you might even change a total group of customers, like you're doing totally different things in your business. And so that those SOPs that you invested in are irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's not that they weren't bad. They were bad. It was just that they are irrelevant now. So yeah, that's interesting. And that really is what the roadmap does. You're right. The axiom, what gets you here won't get you there. We've actually identified in the roadmap what you need to do to get you there. And so that's how the whole goal of the roadmap is you can continue to grow as much as you want, and you don't have to get stuck. So basically, here in Colorado, we have mountains that are 14,000 feet above sea level. We call those 14ers. And I like to hike those. I'm not a technical hiker, you're just doing stairs for like 3 hours, 4 hours straight, but it's fun. But when I get to the trailhead and I'm starting to climb one of those mountains, I don't kneel down, zip open my backpack and shove it with rocks. I want my backpack to be as light as possible. And really what happens is business owners, they have a heavy backpack because they're not aligned with these rules. And at some point, the climb just gets too hard. And they say, okay, growth isn't worth it. It's not worth getting up to that next part. I'm going to stop here. And what our methodology does, it allows them to open up their backpack, take out that weight, lighten their backpack, and it makes growth that much easier.
I think often as well, like part of that weight, like as using the same metaphor, is belief systems and like not really understanding that it is possible. And mostly that comes as a result of not getting exposure to alternative, ways of doing things. And I've used this example, so many times in the past. But look, when I was an apprentice, I was working for a company in the residential plumbing space, and it was my first job. I didn't know any different. We'd go to the job, you'd do the work, you'd pull out the carbon copy notepad, you'd fill in the invoice, you'd tear one off, give it to the customer, you'd tear one off, give it to the lady in the office, and then you would just, it's expected that you spend 3 months chasing the bill. And then I went to another company, and all of a sudden they had these, back then it was these big bank transaction machines, like that,
Right.
like $300 a month to rent off the bank or whatever. But all of a sudden you get paid on site. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, why does everyone not do this? And so
Right.
you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think a lot of businesses, they sort of carry this, and I hear it all the time, and it mostly comes in this form. This business is, it's not scalable, it's not sellable, it's not really, I can't acquire, it won't grow because the business is me.
Right.
And for better or worse, I normally reply saying, well, yeah, you're right. The business, that is exactly right. So what are you going to do about that?
Yeah, what are you going to do about
it? The excuses people give you for the reason why it doesn't work are the reasons they should be giving you for why it should work,
Yeah. No, that's so true. And I think, not to harp on the roadmap, but it really identifies these hidden things. We all know that we have to bill and collect, right? We have to deliver a good product, and we have to treat our customers well. Those are kind of the cost of doing business. But when we hit a ceiling, this roadblock, and it seems like we're doing all the basics right, it gets very frustrating to say, why does it feel like, when I get up to 12 people, things just kind of get all crazy. I'll just stay back at 10 people. That seems to not be so crazy. And we don't really understand why. And that's where this research comes in to say, well, that's because you just went into a new stage, and here's what you need to change. And it's not like these rules are like you have to have an MBA or something like that to understand them. They're very simple, like the one I just told you. Do you know in stage 3, people are the top gate of focus in stage 3? That's 20 to 35 employees. Well, I wouldn't have known that. I could have worked another 10 years and never figured that out because it was hidden. It was one of these things that's under the radar, people don't see. And so you're right. It's oftentimes we don't know what we don't know. That is what's holding us back.
Mm-hmm. So when you acquired this methodology or model, did you acquire it with the intent of practically applying it, or with the intent of showing others how to adopt the same system, or both?
Yes. Yeah, it really is both. We really have 2 customer groups that my Rewild group business serves. We serve independent business consultants, and we've got several in Australia who get certified in the methodology. So really what I want to do is I wanted to take a methodology that was inventor-centric. Really, the inventor was the only one that could use it, but I was able to use it for my business. I wanted it to be replicable, right? I wanted others to benefit from it. And so the idea was to build a model, a framework, a system that other professional business advisors, consultants, coaches could learn and could use. So it was replicable. And then to be able to provide that information to the general public through books and things like that a business owner, if they're a do-it-yourselfer, could pick that up and run with it as well.
And so there's loads of books. Like I'm looking here on Amazon, there's 11. Is it 11 in total?
There's 18 in total. There is two series. There's a series called The Stages of Growth, which are the 7 stages. So there's 7 books there. And then what you're probably looking at is the elements of an exceptional business. Right. So these are those structures, and there's 11 of those structures that as you grow, you need more and more of those structures.
So would you, like for the listeners and viewers out there that are sort of interested in learning more about this framework, obviously we're not going to sit here and talk about all the different stages today, but like what's the best place to like start and I suppose figure out, okay, well, which is the right book for me to start on? Or is it a case of start at the beginning and read all the way through?
No, it's very modularized, and that was intentional. So you can pick up any book and you can benefit from that book without learning the whole system. Right. And even the rules for your stage, if you just get one of the rules right, that's a few more rocks out of your backpack. So you'll see benefit just aligning in any of those areas. So the first thing is to find out what your stage is. And we've got an online calculator. It's pretty simple. It's based on the number of employees, but if you have some outside contractors or some part-timers, the math gets a little more complicated. But basically, you're looking at full-time equivalent people that work for your organization. That then gives you your number of employees. From that determines your stage. So the very best place to start is to figure out your stage, get that stage book. As a business owner, that's where you start. Mm-hmm. And then from there, that starting book will then point you to other books kind of in the series that you can start to work with. And like I said, on our website, we've got a network page, and in Australia, there's advisors there, Sydney and Melbourne, that are available to work with you if you want some assistance.
Yeah, great. No, it's cool. I did look at that before we jumped into the recording, so I'll link to all that stuff for you guys out there that want to check out more. And typically, is that what you would say to people? Look, go and do the test, figure out what your stage is, and then from there make a decision, read the book, or reach out to an advisor or whatever it might be.
And you're more than welcome to reach out to me either through LinkedIn or through the website. We've got a contact form, so you can drop us a note, and I'd be more than happy to get on a chat and just see where you're at, and I'd be glad to point you to the best resources for you.
Matt, what do you think are the primary differences in how you guys operate in comparison to your traditional trade/contractor business coach?
Well, I'll first say that people that focus on the trades will have some industry-specific knowledge that we won't bring to the table. But in my opinion, there's more in common between businesses than there are differences.
Oh, yeah.
So I think what's important is that somebody in the trades has seen it done a certain way, and they've had success with that. But they've not seen the patterns that go across businesses. And those are, I would say, are even more important because those are the commonalities across businesses that I mentioned. So I think we bring that industry agnostic view of the world, and we can help you scale. You may decide that you want an industry coach as well that's helping you with specifics of contracts and technical issues and things like that. We had that in our welding business. I didn't know anything about welder certification. I had to turn to an industry expert for that.
Got it. So this is very much like business foundations, scaling business, not specifically vertical.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Like
it's not specific to the trades. That's correct. So I would say especially if your business is stuck and you want it to grow, I mean, if you're at 3 people and you're happy as clams, probably not worth it. But if you're at 3 people and it's like, I'm still doing a lot of the work and I would like to have an organization so I could do less work as I get older and my knees are going out, whatever it is, I'd rather have a business that's more enjoyable and that might have some value at the end. When I'm done with this, I would like to be able to sell that and reap some more reward for that. If that's more of your mindset, we'll help you work on your business so it's more valuable.
And this kind of ties back to what I was saying before about like you don't know what you don't know. Like somebody might think or have come to the conclusion that they are satisfied and comfortable with where they're at because they don't know what the future path or the alternative might look like because they've never seen anyone do it. They've never had access to resources that can help them walk that path. So, I think, and truthfully, like we're kind of preaching to the choir on this podcast because pretty much anyone that's listening to this is sort of interested in like ways they can grow and improve. But I think fundamentally a lot of, like a lot of people don't know they have a problem, I guess is another way of putting it. Like, hey, broke, don't fix it kind of.
Well, we say that status quo is our biggest competitor. Right. Status quo is very powerful. And there is a decision point. When my wife and I got a valuation of our business at year 12, and it was worth, just under $1 million US, we had a choice of saying, well, that's fine. We're comfortable here. It's paying for the bills. Or we could say, well, no, let's grow it to be worth more. And that takes some courage to do and some, self-reflection. But 3 years later, we sold it for 10 times that. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made, right? That opened up a whole new world to me and my wife. So not that we've never been money motivated, but when it happens and you reap that reward, it's like, wow, this is pretty nice.
Over that time period, what would you say, if you, off the top of your head, could extract, say, 4 or 5 key levers that were enabled you to take the business from that, $1 million valuation to a $10 million valuation at sale point?
Yeah, I'll say a couple. The first was that one, kind of at the more granular level, was the idea that I couldn't focus on process. I had to focus on profit. And what did that actually do, though? Well, instead of building systems internally, I said, we've got to figure out how to generate more leads. We need more leads. So how are we going to do that? Well, I started spending energy, and the team started spending energy about, well, how do we do that? And so we started building databases, systems, of course, to support that. So our own internal CRM, we got lists of attorneys. We were working with attorneys here in the States. And we became a lead generating machine. We went from 1 or 2 proposals a month to 1 every day of the year. And we did that in part. We had a call center that took incoming calls. That was part of the services we provided our clients. We turned them into outbound sales calls. So we made 15,000 outbound sales calls in a year. And it totally changed things. Instead of people just finding us on the website, they were coming to us because they had heard about us. Mm-hmm. And so that was a huge part of the revenue growth. But I'd say a second thing is we defined who we were. We really defined what we call our core values, our promise to the team, how we interacted among the team, and our brand values. Our brand values are how we interact with the marketplace. So we really codified who we are, what our values were, and that really unified our team. And I would say the third thing is we grew a management team. The roadmap told me that, okay, I'm okay not having a manager in stage 1, but by stage 2, I need a couple managers. And by stage 3, I need 3 to 5 managers. It's like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. I've got to be growing these people. I got to be looking for the right candidates that I can grow. So it changed my mindset that I had to be growing this team. And so we went from 8 to 40 employees in those 3 years. We never missed a beat because the roadmap helped me know when things were going to change. But I would say a big part of the valuation was the business wasn't dependent on me anymore. The business could operate without me. So that was a big part. We moved from being owner-centric to being enterprise-centric. And with that, we got several more multiples in the valuation because of that.
So when the business was was up for sale and people were looking to acquire it, one of the core metrics for them was the fact that it runs independently of any one individual, which was not the case when you bought it, because of course the guy that was the welder, he was pretty much everything.
Yeah, and I should, just to clarify, this was the business that my wife and I had earlier. This is not the welding business. We still own the welding business. We'll exit at some point, but yeah, this was the earlier business.
And are you seemingly removed from the welding business? Does Caleb kind of run the show there?
Yeah, one of the things we did at the beginning of this year, end of last year, is Caleb wanted to take on more ownership. And he said, yeah, you guys should spend less hours here. And Dawn and I, we're pretty hands-on kind of people. We like to work. And so that took a little bit of coaxing to kind of get us out. But I would say this is one of the advantages of us buying a welding business. the business in an operational sense could never be dependent on us because we just don't have the skill set. So by almost force, we have to operate as the leadership, and we've got to get other people to do the work. And so it's even, from the start and even today, it's very independent from us because of that.
Matt, it's been a really good chat. I love the whole concept, and I love to hear it from someone else. Like this conversations we have with clients all the time, because when we're onboarding them, we actually have a process which we call our impact roadmap, but it's actually probably less documented than I guess what yours is. But basically, okay, this is where we want to be, and these are the milestones that we need to walk in order to get to that point. More from a marketing perspective, though, as we're a marketing agency. And one of the things that I very, very adamantly drum home, like from the early stages, even before they come on board as clients, is the fact that you, again, like your role within this business has to and needs to change. And what you're doing today, like once this thing starts moving, and it goes pretty quick, you got to be prepared to maybe not be the guy doing the things you're doing today, which at the moment is important, but where we're heading, it's not. And it's a very familiar conversation with that whole needing to evolve and change and adopt different processes. And as you mentioned, I think right at the beginning of the podcast, like the role of the director and CEO within a business throughout the different stages requires putting different hats on and adaptation. And so
one of the rules is called phases, 3 phases of a leader. And so it talks about that as a leader, you can wear the visionary face, the manager face, or the specialist face. And so the percentage of time that and energy you spend wearing each of those faces changes. And so in stage 1, it's okay to be wearing the specialist face half the time. That's okay. But as it grows, as you get to stage 2, specialist diminishes. Stage 3, it diminishes even more. And so it helps you. You're saying that exact same thing, right? That what you do today is probably not what you're going to be doing a year from now, or as your business grows, your role will change. And this, again, just gives kind of a guideline to help you to anticipate that, to have just kind of a best practices to look at and kind of frame it for you. And it just kind of nudges you through those changes that need to take place.
But before we wrap up with I suppose, carrying on from this point, do you find, or A, do you find, and B, how do you navigate the scenarios where it's very clear and obvious that for the business to get where the owner has said they want to go, and sometimes truthfully they don't actually know what that means either, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. But there's a lot of things that need to that they need to do that they are not always comfortable with because they've never had to do it, which is met with resistance. Like, how do you navigate some of those conversations?
Well,
I'll give you a prime example.
Okay, yeah.
For you guys to get to this point here, I need you to be spending less time on site doing the work, and I need you to be attending site visits where you can actually close the jobs from the leads that we're setting you, the appointments we're setting you. Prime example.
Right. And to be frank, and I think you probably have seen this, for some business owners, you can't make them do that, right? There's something in them that keeps them from being able to cross that threshold into that new role. Regardless of what they say they want, regardless of the guidance you're giving them, and that it'll help them, they will never get there. And that's, I don't know how to break through that. That's just human behavior and tendencies. But most of the time, what I see is business owners who are working hard, they're doing what they think they need to be doing. And they'll keep on doing that until somebody can show them, no, if you just pivot here a little bit, you adjust here. Most of them will say, okay, well, that seems to make sense. Or, okay, I'll just trust you on this for a little bit, see if it works. They'll go and do that because they are driven by that success. They want to have an impact on a greater number of people. They want to have greater financial freedom. there's a lot of motivation there. So I find that if you can be clear about where they're going and why it's important for them to get there, and be specific on what they need to be doing to get there, many will rise up. They may need some personal coaching to get them there, right? So, they're a plumber. They don't really know how to talk as well or how to put a proposal together. And you can coach them on those specific tasks and they'll pick that up. And maybe they need some support. Maybe they're not good with technology. So they need to have an office person that can type it up and, take care of that administrative stuff. So you can find a way, I think, to support them if they have a clear goal and they see why they need to do that. And then there has to be the personal motivation to change.
I think it ties heavily back into what you were saying about how you need to be willing and accepting of the fact that in order to hit these targets, which you've said, and again, sometimes they don't always understand what that means, but
right.
willing to adopt these changes and make and do the thing that's going to help them get there. And like we always see, the business owners as the bottleneck within within a lot of these dynamics.
Well, and even just like this idea of owner-centric to enterprise-centric, that really occurs at stage 3 of being able to know that, okay, I don't have to do that today, but as the organization grows up, it's going to need me by this point to kind of start to make the organization less owner-centric, and that's okay, and that'll be healthier. And I think one of the things that holds business owners back is they're working hard right now. They're giving it their all, and they think, oh, if I double the number of people and double the revenue, I'm going to have to work twice as hard. And there's this mental block there that says, well, I don't want to do that. That's going to kill me. And so just helping them see that actually, when we went from a stage 1 to stage 3 business, almost to stage 4, I actually fell in love with my business again. I was doing stuff that I always wanted to do, but I didn't have time to do because I had to get so much of the work done. I was now leading people and growing people. And that was a whole new dynamic. I didn't know that I wanted that really until I got there. And stage 3 was I was working fewer hours with 40 people than I was with 8.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the misconception. And again, perhaps it's like you don't know what you don't know, but essentially like what people I think envisage in their mind is, wow, if I doubled the business and I doubled my staff, it would be managed the same way that I'm managing it today, which is all of them reporting to me. And that is not, that would be a shitstorm without question. So I think the missing pieces here are like, and as you've mentioned earlier, throughout these different stages, you do need to implement management structure and you do need to have like layers of reporting and things like that so that it's not all, landing on your doorstep.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt, this has been awesome. I'm going to have links to everything, all of your the websites. I've got your email here. I've got the books. I'll put for you guys over there in North America. I'll have the link to the Amazon US, and for you Southern Hemisphere is the Amazon Australian links to all Matt's stuff as well. Mate, thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting. I'd love to. If any of you guys out there have any experience, or if there's something that we haven't covered here, or if you want to dive deeper into anything specifically, maybe you've read one of Matt's books and you've got some questions, I'm sure I can rubber arm Matt to coming back on the show and answering some of these with a bit of a deep dive. Matt, door's always open for you as well. If there's anything you want to talk specifically about or any observations that you've seen, it'd be great to have you come back on and talk about some of those things.
I'd welcome the opportunity.
Great. All right,
okay.
Viewers, that is a wrap. Hey guys and girls, how would you like all of the value adds left behind from our podcast guest all put together in the one spot? We've pulled every tool together, every template, every resource shared on the show, and we've packed them all into the Tradie Academy. It's free to join and it's built by the team behind the SiteShed and Tradie Web guys. Inside, you'll get marketing tips, business tools, and first access to future resources, all in one simple dashboard. Just head across to tradie.wiki/pod. That's tradie.wiki/pod. The link's in the episode description. And once again, you just log in once and then you're all set. And if you want to get notified of upcoming episodes, hit subscribe or follow.